I'm tired.
The Late Morning Program with Nam Ras Podcast.
Hare Krishna, everyone. You are listening to the Late Morning Program with Namras, the #1 Hare Krishna podcast in the world. I'm so deeply honored to have His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj joining me today on the podcast. Thank you, Maharaj, for joining me.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Maharaj, so you are a very interesting and inspiring member of the Hare Krishna community, the ISKCON community, and recently Maharaj has written a book called I'll Build You a Temple, the Juhu Story. Maharaj will be talking a little bit about his book, about his spiritual journey today as well, because I know there's a lot of interesting things in this book which describes his journey and also his helping Srila Prabhupada build this wonderful temple in Juhu. So Maharaj, maybe we can first start off with how you came in contact with devotees and with Srila Prabhupada.
Well, from high school, I was looking for perfect happiness, and I came to the conclusion that one could not attain perfect happiness materially, but one had to achieve it spiritually. And doing further reading, I came to the conclusion that in order to progress spiritually, one needed a guru. And then my quest became to find my guru. And I would go anywhere, practically, at least within 1,000 miles of Brandeis University near Boston, where I was a student, to find my guru. But in every case, and I met many, but in every case I was disappointed. No, this is not my perfect master. No, this is not my perfect master. This is not my perfect master. And I almost became hopeless. And then one night, I saw a poster on my university campus, lecture, Bhagavad Gita as it is, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So that evening, I had some friends over for dinner. I was vegetarian by then. And we were planning to go to the movies after dinner. But something inside me kept pushing me that, you have to go to this lecture. And one of my friends, a lady, was very upset. She said, why can't you be like a normal person? Why do you have to always be chasing after these swamis and yogis? And she was raising her voice, and I raised my voice. And then I said, all right, this will be the last one I ever go to.
Wow.
Which was prophetic. It was prophetic. So we went, and because of the arguing, we reached late. And the kirtan, it was the last kirtan. And the Satsvarupa Das was leading the kirtan, and the sound was vibrating off the bare brick walls. And students, like one by one, students from the audience were climbing up on the stage and joining the chanting and dancing. And I also felt like doing that. But I knew that would be too much for my friends. So I just stood up, in my place, and I sort of swayed back and forth. Then afterwards, Sadhvarupa announced that if anyone is driving to Cambridge or Boston, they should meet the devotees in the lobby, because the devotees needed a ride. And I was going to Cambridge, to Harvard Square, to the movie. So I went out to the lobby, and the first devotee I met, first devotee I ever spoke to, was Bharadraj Prabhu.
Oh, wow.
And he was like so high on Krishna consciousness. I mean, all the other so-called gurus I had seen, all their students were like pretty like morose and down, but Bharadraj Prabhu was really high. And they started speaking about the Bhagavad Gita. And then finally I said, I have a station wagon and I can take the devotees to Harvard Square. So they all piled in. I was in the front with two ladies. One was Janava. I'll get to her. And then, there were other devotees in the middle seat, and then there were others, including Sadhvarupa and my best friend Gary, in the back compartment. So I started asking Janava questions, and she answered with such authority. I asked about Yogananda, because I'd read Autobiography of a Yogi. And she said, oh, he's just a shopkeeper. Whatever you want, he pulls off the shelf. And she said, if you ever go to his ashram in California, you'll see that he has a monument to Mahatma Gandhi as a world peace worker. She said he wasn't a world peace worker. He was just trying to drive the British out of India. He doesn't even know who Mahatma Gandhi is. So she was like really strong. Then I asked about Zen. And she said that this world is like what we experience in this world is like images on a movie screen. But if you draw your consciousness back, you'll see there's a light. And then if you go further back, you'll see that light comes to a point. And I thought, wow, this is the best explanation of Zen I've ever heard. And then she said, but behind that point is a projector. And behind the projector is a person.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, this is incredible. This is a better explanation of Zen than I've ever heard. And it goes far beyond Zen. So, but I was thinking, she's just a young girl and she's speaking with such authority. This couldn't all just be coming from her, it must be coming from her teacher. So we reached Harvard Square, and I let the devotees out. And then I realized I didn't know how to reach them after that. I didn't have the address of the temple. So I stopped the car and I raced after the devotees. And the first devotee I caught up with was Petit Pavan Das. And I mean, everyone I met was like so high. And he said, see all these people? They're just like sleepwalkers. They don't know who they are or where they're going.
Wow.
And I was just so fascinated listening to him speak. And then suddenly I heard loud honking of horns, and I realized, oh my God, I left the car in the roundabout at Harvard Square and all the traffic was back. So I said, okay, quick, give me the address. He gave me the address, and I went the next night. And so Srila Prabhupada was speaking, and at one stage, he quoted the verse, Manusyanam Sahasresu Kastridyat Siddhaya. Out of many thousands of men, one will seek perfection. And I thought, that's me. He's talking about me. And then eventually, he asked for questions. And I raised my hand. I was burning to ask my question, which was, there's so many swamis and yogis, and each one recommends a different process of self-realization, and each says that his is the best. So how do I know which is actually the best? And Srila Prabhupada gave such a brilliant reply. He began by asking me, what is your goal? Do you want to become God or do you want to serve God? Because I was asking, what is the best means? But there's a more basic question, means to what end?
Right.
And actually, well, I'll come to that in a minute or two. So Srila Prabhupada proceeded brilliantly to convince me that I was not God. And he said, if you want to become God, that means you're not God now. And how can not God become God? And he said, Krishna is God. He's always God. He doesn't have to become God by yoga or meditation. And he's God when he's playing on the lap of Mother Yashoda. He's God when he's speaking the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. He's always God. He doesn't have to become God. So if you want to serve God, and you sow the seed of service to God and water it with chanting, God will give you all the sunlight and favorable conditions to make that it grow. But if you want to become God, you're only cheating yourself. Because why should God help the competition? So he said more. It was, very persuasive. But what really convinced me beyond any doubt that he was my perfect master, I felt that he was like seeing straight through me, out the walls of the temple, down the roads leading into my apartment. And he was seeing into my apartment, into my bathroom, where I had posted in beautiful ornate lettering, a sign that said, "You are God."
Wow.
I thought, he knows everything. Well, then at the end, he said, so what do you think? You want to serve God or you want to become God? So I said, I want to serve God, but I knew I couldn't cheat him. So I said, I want to serve, but actually I had wanted to become God. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes. So I bowed my head in obeisances and in surrender, and I kept it down for a long time, mainly in the mood of surrender, but also I was afraid that if I looked up, everyone who was in the temple room, storefront, small storefront, would be glaring at me. Oh, he wanted to become God. He wanted to become God. But then I heard sounds that indicated that they were serving food. So I thought, okay, I think it's safe. So I came up and devotee handed me a plate of prasad. And I think the first thing I tasted was a cauliflower pakora. It was like an
Wow.
explosion of taste in my mouth. And every preparation was just fantastic. And I thought, and the chanting, I really liked the chanting. That was another thing. And then I thought everything about Krishna consciousness is perfect. You know, the guru, the philosophy, the chanting, the food, everything is perfect. And yeah, so I surrendered. My search was over. And then my whole goal was to just bring people to Srila Prabhupada. That was my whole life's ambition.
So did you were you when you joined, were you kind of stationed in the Boston area, or were you sent somewhere else to serve?
Oh, yes, that's a very good question. So, yeah, I joined the Boston Temple, and I was in Boston for a year and a half. And after a year and a half, Srila Prabhupada announced that he wanted to return to India. And he wanted the number 2 devotee in each temple to go with him. And I happened to be the number 2 devotee in Boston. Satsvarupa Prabhu then was the number 1, and I was the number 2.
Like number 2 as in when you joined?
No, in terms of responsibility.
Oh, I see. I see.
I was the treasurer, temple commander, and Sankirtan leader. So in that
Oh, I see.
I
Okay.
was number 2. So I got to go. Everyone wanted to go, and from Boston I got to go,
Wow.
which was certainly a great blessing.
And then that's when the whole so you were in India, and is that when, how did it happen where Srila Prabhupada told you or he expressed his desire that he wanted a temple in Mumbai?
Yes. So we went to India in October of 1970. And for about a year and a half, we traveled around India. We didn't have the Juhu land. And the centers we did have, well, at first we didn't have any centers. And then gradually Prabhupada rented a house in Calcutta. And then, and we were staying at different friends' homes in Bombay. And then Srila Prabhupada was like so amazing. So we were traveling, and then Srila Prabhupada had the first Gaur Purnima festival in Mayapur in 1972. He was staying in that straw hut near the entrance to the property, which is still there.
Right.
Very simple. And he called for me, and he said, during the British rule, they had 3 provinces, Bombay, Calcutta, and Madras. Which do you want? I said, Srila Prabhupada, I'll do whatever you say. I'll go wherever you want. And he said, no, I want you to decide.
Wow.
And that made me realize that, yeah, he was forcing me to come to a higher level of surrender to get the answer. Because I had heard that there are 3, say, categories of disciples. The third receives an order from the spiritual master, and he doesn't execute it, or he does it begrudgingly. Second, he receives an order from the spiritual master and he executes it perfectly. In the first class, he knows what the spiritual master wants without even being told, and he does it. So I had to figure out what Srila Prabhupada wanted without being told. So from Mayapur, we went to Calcutta, and every day I would chant in front of the deities, Sri Radha Govind, and pray, but I wasn't getting any answer. And then one day, I hatched the plan to go to Srila Prabhupada and trick him, revealing where he wanted me to go. So I went in and I said, I was thinking of going back to Madras. And then I gave the reasons. And without any special facial expression, he said, yes, you can do that. And then I said, but then again, I was thinking I should stay in Calcutta. And then I gave the reasons for that. The same thing, same deadpan expression, same tone of voice. Yes, that. And by then I got the sinking feeling that my plan wasn't going to work. But I was committed to this strategy. So then but then again, I was thinking I should go to Bombay, and I gave the reasons for that. Same deadpan expression. Yes, you can do that. So then I offered my obeisances. But I was happy, actually, that my spiritual master was so great that he couldn't be tricked by a foolish disciple. But I was still faced with that question. And meanwhile, Prabhupada left. I was chanting, praying. And then one day I just got an insight that I should go to Bombay. And my reasoning was that our main program in India was life membership. And if we took good care of the life members, they themselves would make more members. And if we didn't take good care of them, even if we personally went to make someone a member, he might not become a member because he would have heard the complaints. So that was my idea. And then, so I wrote Prabhupada, and he said, yes, come to Bombay immediately. So I went to Bombay with that in mind. And one day, soon after I got there, Srila Prabhupada held a meeting to discuss who would take charge of the project. And I didn't think I was in consideration because there were so many more senior devotees than me. So we went into Srila Prabhupada's room. He was staying at one of the tenants' homes. And so it was quite tense. And then Srila Prabhupada turned to me and he said, so Giriraj, you will take charge? That was not my idea at all. But with my intelligence, I said, if that is what you wish, I will do it. But I was really rebelling against the idea because I didn't like management. I didn't think I was that good at it, and I preferred to preach. So Prabhupada said, good. And then he said, so now the whole responsibility is on you. And I thought, why is Srila Prabhupada saying that? Doesn't he know how hard this is going to be? And now it's like he's rubbing it in by saying now the whole responsibility is on you. But I knew with my intelligence that Srila Prabhupada knew what was best for everyone.
Wow.
And, so I accepted it.
For those devotees who have just joined, we have 115 or 20 people all over their platforms watching right now. So we're discussing this book here, I'll Build You a Temple, Juhu Story, that Maharaj just recently released and wrote here. So Maharaj, I want to kind of ask you a little bit about the obstacles that you faced. I don't want to go through the whole story because the devotees can read the book, obviously, but I want to talk a little bit about the obstacles that you faced. It seems that I mean, to do anything in India, it seems like it's so difficult to get things going and like build a temple. Even now, it's so difficult. What to speak of, 40, 50 years ago when you did that. So, first of all, I want to talk about this very interesting character that was depicted on the Abhay Charan. That's how I was introduced to him, Mr. Nair. Can we talk a little bit about who he was and why he was such an obstacle?
Yes, Mr. Nair was a demon. I should say that one year, the verse was like that, Bhagavatam verse in Los Angeles about demons. And somehow in that context, I told the story of Juhu and Mr. Nair. And afterwards, Virabahu Prabhu told me, I don't usually like it when devotees call people demons.
Right.
But after hearing this story, I agree. Nair was a demon.
Wow.
And he was a very cunning man. And he offered Srila Prabhupada the land. He, presented himself as a well-wisher. He offered Srila Prabhupada the land. But he was so cunning that he had done this with one other person before us as well. He'd entered an agreement to sell it. But then he embedded within the agreement a condition that he was sure that the person couldn't fulfill because he would use his influence. He was the editor of one of 3 English daily newspapers in Bombay, and he had been the sheriff of Bombay. He was a very influential person. So with the previous customer, you could say, he embedded the condition that the customer had to get the land subdivided. And then Nair made sure that the subdivision didn't go through. And so on that basis, Nair canceled the agreement and he kept the man's money. With Prabhupada, he embedded a condition that Prabhupada had to get permission from the charity commissioner. And then he used his influence with the charity commissioner's office to make sure he didn't get permission. And it was also like embedded in the agreement that, time is the essence of the contract, and we had 6 months. And when we didn't get the permission from the charity commissioner, Nair canceled the agreement. Same thing. And he was planned to keep all the money. So there are many, many intrigues. Nair had our lawyer. Somehow Nair got our lawyer on his side, and so the lawyer gave us some, you could say, bad advice. But it's like Krishna's greatness is shown in his killing powerful demons. So Prabhupada's greatness was also shown by his defeating this powerful demon.
And he died during this whole thing, right? Is that what happened?
He did, and that's another story. Yeah, Nair had a heart attack and died. So one day I was walking on the sidewalk in a part of Bombay called Metro Cinema, Dhobi Talao. And, there were vendors with newspapers and magazines sitting on the sidewalk. And I just happened to glance down and I saw this headline, A.B. Nair dead. And I was jubilant. I felt like dancing in the street. But then I thought to myself, is this proper? I mean, we're trying to be saintly persons. Is this how a saintly person would react? So I wasn't sure. That's it. That's it. A.B. Nair dead. Right on the front page.
Yeah.
Perfect. So Bali Mardan was in Bombay at the time. He was more senior than me. And he said, we have to phone Prabhupada and let him know. So Bali Mardan phoned, and Prabhupada was getting his massage, and he sent Shruti Kirti Prabhu to take the call. And what actually transpired is in the book. But in Bombay, I didn't know what transpired, but we got a letter from Srila Prabhupada that I have received a telephonic message from Bali Mardan that the demon Nair is dead.
Oh my God.
And he quoted that Prahlad Maharaj says that even a saintly person takes pleasure when a snake or a scorpion is killed. And Nair was a big snake. So basically, he was approving that we felt pleasure in Nair's death.
Wow.
Yeah.
What, Marge, what inspired you to write this book? Because it seems that it's like a very long and detailed story. So can you tell us a little bit about what was the thought process behind? I know it's a wonderful. I think Srila Prabhupada even said that maybe this should be written as a book.
Yes. Srila Prabhupada did. Well, Srila Prabhupada struggled to build a temple and establish Hare Krishna land in Juhu on the outskirts of Bombay was perhaps the greatest effort of his preaching movement. In fact, from the time he returned to India in August 1970, he spent 554 days in Bombay, more than any other place in the world. And it took 6 years, from 1972, when he took possession of the land, to 1978, when the temple opened. And after the conveyance was signed, he declared it was a good fight. Someone should write a book about it.
Wow.
So I served in Juhu as temple president and later as governing body commissioner between 1972 and 1999, raising funds and overseeing every aspect of the project, the only devotee to be closely involved throughout that period. And Srila Prabhupada had already told me in 1971, you should write, this is your first business, and repeated this instruction over the years. So despite my limitations and disqualifications, but with the encouragement and assistance of many well-wishers, I took up writing about him and Juhu as he desired.
If, before we go into more parts of the book, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your parents. What was their reaction to their son taking up Krishna consciousness?
They didn't like it. They didn't like it at all. So as I mentioned, I was studying at Brandeis University in Boston. And Srila Prabhupada came to my university and I joined the temple. And it was a big thing, my graduating. And my grandmother had 2 sons, my father, who was a lawyer, later became a judge, and my uncle, who was a doctor. And I was like the first grandchild who was graduating, so she wanted to come. But when my parents found out what happened, that I had joined the movement, I don't know how they explained it, but they encouraged, they told her not to come. So my parents came, And the first day they came to the temple, I was in the kitchen peeling potatoes. And my father said, I spent all this money on your education so you could peel potatoes. So, it was, but, they were good people. My father was a man of integrity, and he was a lawyer and later became a judge. And whenever there was like propaganda against the movement, he would always defend it and say it. He knew it was a genuine movement. He knew that Prabhupada was a genuine spiritual master. And so once, I'm not sure what else you have in mind to ask, because I could say a little more about this, or we could move
Please.
on.
No, please.
Yeah. So, before Juhu, I was in Calcutta. I was in the Calcutta temple. And my parents came to visit. And I was a little apprehensive because I was strict brahmachari, trying to be a strict brahmachari. And Prabhupada said, you have to spend time with them. They're coming a long distance. You have to spend time with them. So then finally, I introduced them to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada dealt with them so skillfully. It was amazing. He began by saying how he used to have a pharmacy in Allahabad, and Motilal Nehru was his customer. And Motilal Nehru told him that he had a son named Jawaharlal Nehru who was useless. So he was thinking of giving him to the freedom movement. And he was saying how Motilal Nehru was like a made in England man, that Prabhupada would sell the exact same medicine made in India and the exact same medicine made in England, and it would cost much more from England, but Motilal Nehru would always take the one made in England. So in a subtle way, Srila Prabhupada was working on my father's prejudices. First, that if someone is a big man in the material world, it means he's a great person. And here he's quoting Jawaharlal Nehru, who was the first prime minister of India, quoting his father, saying he's useless. And then this, just like the things made in England or the West are better than things made in India. So, but eventually, my father came to the point, which was they wanted me back. He said I could remain Krishna conscious, but I should come back to America. And it's also true at that time I was quite thin, and my mother was concerned about my health. So, so my father said, that I want to make a trust for my son and put $1 million in it, which even now is a lot, but back then it was really a lot. And I want him to come to America to sign the documents. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, you can send the documents, he will sign. And then my father, Srila Prabhupada could see they weren't completely satisfied. And Srila Prabhupada said, well, all right, let him stay with me. It was October. Let him stay with me. And when I come to America in April, I'll bring him with me. Then I said to my father, just see how intelligent Srila Prabhupada is. When it's pleasantly cool in India, but too cold in America, he stays in India. And then when it gets unpleasantly hot in India, but it's pleasantly warm in America, he goes to America.
Right.
So by that time, my father was getting really enlivened by Srila Prabhupada. He said, yes, your master is very intelligent. And Srila Prabhupada said, well, I must be intelligent. Otherwise, how could I attract so many intelligent young men as your son? And my father said, no, actually, you are very intelligent. But my mother, her angle was my health, because I looked thin. And back then, people had the idea that if you didn't eat meat, you wouldn't get enough protein. So Srila Prabhupada would always keep sweets on his desk, and especially being Calcutta, he had rasgulla and sandesh. So he started to hand. So he was handing it out. He was putting it in my father's hand, my mother's hand, and he said these are made from cheese, and they're very high in protein. And then he said to me, Giriraj, you must eat 24 rasgulla and sandesh every day. I'm still working on it. I'm not there. He said that. And yeah, my father was charmed. My mother was charmed. And as my father was leaving the room, he said to me, I can say two things about your master. One, he really knows how to deal with people. And two, he's a brilliant organizer. And in my father's value system, those were like the two highest compliments, he could
Wow.
pay to anyone. So from Calcutta, I went to Madras. I was the first devotee to go to Madras. And, we didn't have a center or anything, and, staying at different people's homes and eating lots of idlis and dosa and sambar and everything. I put on weight. And then I arranged a program for Srila Prabhupada. He came, he saw that I'd put on weight, and he said, you should take a picture of yourself and send it to your mother. Yeah, he hadn't forgotten. He was like so kind and considerate. So
Wow.
Are they still around, or did they leave?
no, they left. Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, as I mentioned, my father always defended the movement.
Wonderful. It seems, Maharaj, that looking through the book, there were so many obstacles that you faced in getting this temple finished for Srila Prabhupada. And I wanted to talk a little bit about obstacles. And did you feel any hopelessness, or did you feel any like I'm gonna give up, or I can't do this myself? Like, talk to us a little bit about what you were thinking at that time as being a young person who was told to manage building a temple in a completely foreign country. It's just I want to kind of get into your head at that time.
There were a lot of obstacles. I mean, there was Nair, and he had his allies who, were placed in important positions. But, I had so much faith in Srila Prabhupada. I mean, many devotees left. And at one stage, Srila Prabhupada said, I mean, I don't think I put it in the book, but Srila Prabhupada said, Giriraj is the only one who understands my vision for Juhu. And so, yeah, I persevered. And I was convinced, this is also a very important point, I was convinced that the secret of success in spiritual life is to follow the order of the spiritual master. and please the spiritual master. Yeah, in 1971. Yeah, 1970, we had a big Pandal program at Cross Maidan in Bombay. And that was the first time now His Holiness Radhanath Swami met devotees.
Right.
And His Holiness Lokanath Swami also, he attended the second Pandal. So anyway, after the success of the first Bombay Pandal, Srila Prabhupada sent Tamal Krishna Goswami and me to Calcutta to arrange a big Pandal program there, which we did. And it was even better attended than the one in Bombay. Tamal Krishna Goswami said, you collect the money and I'll spend it. I said, okay.
Right.
So, that was very successful.
It's just because right now I feel like in my generation of devotees, we don't face these kind of obstacles that your generation faced. Like no one's telling me to go to somewhere to build a temple where it's like, but yet we have so many obstacles, but different obstacles. It could be in our own spiritual lives, in our sadhana, and in what's going on in the world, maybe. So what would you say to someone of my generation of how to maybe use those obstacles to move forward, or how to not feel hopeless, or how to not feel like maybe I don't have exactly my spiritual master telling me, as like you said, the most important thing is following the order of the spiritual master. But for our generation, what would you say is following the spiritual master's instructions when it's not like go build a temple?
Well, there are general instructions and specific instructions. And Srila Prabhupada is our founder Acharya. And so he's like, the foundational Shiksha Guru of all devotees in ISKCON. So we have his general instructions in his books and lectures and letters. But specific instructions like, build a temple, we don't have. But Srila Prabhupada did give some advice how to get instruction in his absence. Satsvarupa Das asked Srila Prabhupada that now you're here, so if we have any questions, we can ask you, but what about later when you're not here? And Srila Prabhupada replied, the holy name of Krishna is identical to Krishna. Do you understand this fact? And on other occasions also, Srila Prabhupada hinted that, or said that by offenseless chanting of the holy name, we could get answers to our questions in his absence. And of course, we can consult. That Prabhupada also recommended that, and it's stated in Shastra, Kalo Shakti Samgaha, that in Kali Yuga there's strength or energy, Shakti, in Sangha, in association. And so, Srila Prabhupada didn't appoint an Acharya, as we know. He made the governing body the ultimate managing authority of the entire International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So, yes, consulting is very important. And Srila Prabhupada said in an assembly of well-wishing, mature Vaishnavas, we should accept their conclusion as coming from Krishna.
Wow. Thank you for that. Going back to the Mumbai story, were there certain devotees that you really leaned on when you were going through all this? I mean, how did you communicate with the people who were supplying the resources and the materials, and also did you confide in any peers, and or how was that?
Well, when we got the Juhu land, Srila Prabhupada made me the temple president, and Tamal Krishna Goswami was the GBC for India. And yeah, he was very intelligent and staunch. So yeah, I relied on him a lot. But eventually he left India.
All right.
Went to America and started the Radha Damodar party. But and we were a good team. We collected a lot of money. Some some people would say we're like good cop and bad cop. Yeah, we collected a lot. First, because of all the legal complications with Jew, we were collecting for Vrindavan. And then when the legal complications got cleared, we collected for Juhu a lot.
Mm.
And some devotees you can sort of complain to Srila Prabhupada that Tamal Krishna Goswami and I both are such good preachers. Why should we go together? But Srila Prabhupada replied, if together they can collect more than the sum total of the two of them separately, then they should go together. And I think that was the case because we were a really good team. Yeah.
Wow. And what was your tell us a little bit about your relationship with Tamal Krishna Maharaj later on, and in your did you eventually serve together in any actually maybe let's go into after you left the service in 1999 in Mumbai as a temple president in GBC, then what were you focusing on at that time?
Oh, well, Srila Prabhupada had given me the instruction to write, to take up writing as my first business. But as what to speak of, temple president, as GBC, I was always traveling and, giving classes, having meetings with devotees. And I wasn't really able to write. I mean, I wrote articles for Back to Godhead, but that was it, about it. And then in 1999, I had heart, I think maybe end of 98, I developed a heart condition. And in 1999, I had cardiac bypass surgery.
Oh.
And then I couldn't travel the way I used to.
Right.
And then I made my base in Santa Barbara. It happened that was where I couldn't travel anymore. My health didn't allow me, so I was in Santa Barbara, and I thought, well, okay, this is the opportunity. Prabhupada wanted me to write, and so then one after that, like every year, I would bring out a book. First, Watering the Seed, then Many Moons,
Right.
and his final exam, and then the Juhu book. That took longer. That took about 3 years. But I was finally able to do that. So Santa Barbara, it was good for my health, and it was good for my writing. And Tamal Krishna Goswami visited me here. But I think after, of course, I was still traveling. I met him in Cambridge when he was in Cambridge, and we also spent time together in India. So, but I mean, Srila Prabhupada saw us together. He saw us as a good team. And in his last year, he made a power of attorney. And he gave the power of attorney to Tamal Krishna Goswami and me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And there were a number of events in that last year when Srila Prabhupada wouldn't do something unless the two of us, Tamal Krishna Goswami and I, agreed. So he saw us as a good team, and then after Prabhupada left, we still did a lot of service together in Bombay, and he was very strong-willed, and sometimes we would disagree on points, and he would not yield. But he was also very Krishna conscious, and many times, almost every time, well, at least many times, he would chant. Like in the morning, he would chant very intently. And then afterwards, he would come back to me and he would say, I was thinking about what you said. And I think you're right, actually. So, we'll do that. So, yeah, his chanting, his Krishna consciousness.
What was it about you two together that I guess maybe what I'm asking is, how did you work together so smoothly and as a team? Because it seems that nowadays, or even at that time as well, sometimes it's hard to work with devotees very closely and find a common goal or focus. There's always some friction. So what was it about your relationship with him that made it like that it was recognized by Srila Prabhupada?
Well, we were united in our surrender and love for Srila Prabhupada. And we had, anyway, I'll say it, although it's not something I would recommend for all devotees, but there's a system of personality types called the Enneagram.
Right, I've heard of that, yeah.
And according to the Enneagram, I'm a 1 and he's a 3. And both 1s and 3s are achievers. But the 1 is like more idealistic, and the 3 is more pragmatic. And I think Srila Prabhupada saw that Tamal Krishna Goswami's pragmatism was very useful for getting things done. But sometimes he might cut corners when it came to principles. But I, being a 1, it was very principled. But sometimes being too principled can also get in the way of getting things done. So somehow the combination of us was good. And Prabhupada saw that, and he put us together, and we were able to achieve a lot in service to Srila Prabhupada.
I also want to talk about His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, because I know he's mentioned in the book and in the later chapters a little bit about your relationship with him at that time, as well as in more recent years. Please tell us a little bit about him.
Well, we first met in the bathroom.
Oh, really?
At the Mahakumbha Mela.
Wow, what a place to meet.
In Allahabad, yeah. Because he had just fairly recently joined. And the Kumbh Mela was like, end of 76, beginning of 77. So Mahakumbha Mela, every 12 years is Kumbh Mela, and every 12 Kumbh Melas, every 144 years is Mahakumbha Mela. It was Mahakumbha Mela. And so I saw him and I didn't recognize him. So I asked who he was, and I introduced myself. He tells about that in his book, Ocean of Mercy, our
Right.
first meeting. And I could see he was very refined and cultured. And, after the Kumbh Mela, Srila Prabhupada came to Juhu, and Bhakti Tirtha Swami was part of his personal staff. And so, I got to have his association there. But even more so in Vrindavan, during Srila Prabhupada's last days,
Right.
Bhakti Tirtha Swami took such good care of him. And at one stage there was quite a controversy in Srila Prabhupada's last days, because Srila Prabhupada expressed a desire to go to Govardhan Hill for Govardhan Puja on a bullock cart. And the disciples sort of broke into two groups. And Prabhupada's personal servants, Tamal Krishna Goswami, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, Bhavananda Maharaj, then they didn't want him to make that trip, because they said, even if they put a mattress on the bullock cart, still, there's so many potholes in the road, and Prabhupada will get jostled. It would be painful for him. He might even die on the way. Tamal Krishna Goswami said people might even accuse us of killing him. And then the other group was led by Hansadutta Prabhu. And he said, no, we should execute the order of the spiritual master. It's not our position to question his order or to try to impose our will on the spiritual master. So I wasn't really sure. I mean, personally, I was closer to the Prabhupada's personal staff. But philosophically, I couldn't really determine who was right. But then just after Prabhupada left, I was chanting. I would chant in his room when he wasn't there. That was my practice. And after he left, I was chanting in, like, behind his bed where there's bookshelves. And my eyes fell upon a new volume of Srimad Bhagavatam that had just come out. And it was gold embossed, made specially for Srila Prabhupada. And I opened it up, and it came, within a few verses, it came to a statement that it's from the Damodar Leela, that although Krishna is the, controller of the universe and all of the powerful demigods therein, he has one attribute. He comes under the control of the love of his devotees. And when I read that to me answered the question, that Srila Prabhupada had come under the control of the love of his devotees and agreed not to go by bullock cart to Govardhan.
Wow. Amazing. You were there at the time when Srila Prabhupada left this world, right? I think I remember you in the videos there.
I was.
Can you tell us a little bit about that time, how you were feeling, what was the mood of the devotees, and the Jew project wasn't completely done yet, right?
Yeah, we opened the Juhu temple on January 14th, 1978.
Right.
Exactly 2 months after Prabhupada left.
Oh, right.
But he always spoke to me about Juhu, even in Vrindavan, and he was giving advice about the opening and
Oh, wow.
many details, even from Vrindavan.
Hmm.
But I mean, in those last days, there were a few significant events. One of them, involving me and Srila Prabhupada.
Yes.
One of them, I think it was like 3 days before he left. I was taking a rest on the terrace of the Gurukul building. And in the middle of the night, a devotee woke me up and said, Prabhupada is calling for you. And I didn't know what to expect because Prabhupada's health was so delicate. So, yeah, I went to his room. He was lying on his bed. And he said, so what do you think? After I leave, will this movement go on?
Wow.
And I replied, yes, as long as the devotees are sincere, chant their rounds and follow the regulated principles, it will go on. And then Prabhupada, in a very soft voice, with some difficulty said, organization, intelligence and organization. And I thought about it, that yes, we do have to be sincere and chant our rounds and follow the four regulated principles for our own spiritual lives. But to spread Krishna consciousness, we need to be organized and intelligent. And so from that statement of Srila Prabhupada's, I took it that he was saying that we have to preach, and to preach, you need organization and intelligence. And then he said, is there anything else? And within my heart, I felt like my heart was screaming out, don't leave,
Yeah.
But I didn't say it. I didn't articulate it. I said, is there anything else? I said, no, Srila Prabhupada, and I offered my obeisances. But in retrospect, I do wish I had said that. Anyway, I'm sure
And then, yeah, and then after he left, your whole motivation was that, okay, fulfilling his desire that Juhu was built and all, and the temple was developed and whatnot. But after he left, did you feel any sort of diminishing in your, maybe your desire or anything? Because the Vapu of Prabhupada was no longer there, but the instruction was still there. But did you feel any kind of diminishment in your enthusiasm?
I don't think so. I felt separation, that's for sure. I felt
Sure.
separation. But I wouldn't say that my enthusiasm diminished, because I knew, okay, now we built the temple, now we have to use it.
Right.
That Prabhupada wanted. And I was enthusiastic to do that.
Mm.
And Tamal Krishna, so after Prabhupada left in Vrindavan, Tamal Krishna Goswami and I and Bhavananda, maybe one other. So as Prabhupada had directed, we should take some flowers from his samadhi to Mayapur and establish a Pushpa samadhi there. So that group of us did that. And then in Calcutta, might even have been his Prabhupada's son, Vrindavan Chandra Day. He was like, now that Prabhupada is not here, who's going to speak to people about Krishna? And Tamal Krishna Goswami looked at me and he said, that is a very good question. But of course, we had to rise to the occasion. I mean, not that we could do it on the level of Srila Prabhupada, but we had to do what we could.
Sure. For our listeners, we're going to be taking questions now that are in the comment section. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask Maharaj, please keep it succinct, and I will post it on the screen for Maharaj to answer. Let's look at the comment section right now. There's a lot of appreciation
for this interview. Let's start here with Tulsi Priya Dasi. If you haven't already, can you please ask Maharaj about the process of collecting all the sources for all the factual info in the book? Seems like there was a lot of documentation to go through and select for inclusion. Though the book is so comprehensive, it seems like he didn't leave much out. Could you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yes. I had a lot of support in this effort from a disciple in Israel named Rohini Nandan Das. And he studied the whole history of the Juhu project to become familiar with it. And then he put together what he called collections, which were things I had said on a particular topic over the years, or had maybe even written. And I also did a lot of interviews of devotees, and I had a team that was doing interviews. So we had a lot of interviews. And then there was the Adubara's video series following Srila Prabhupada.
Right.
And so Rohini Nandan not only got the transcripts of what devotees said in the video series, but there was a lot more that they said that Yadubara didn't include in the narration. So he got the full transcripts of all of those. And he put it all together in what he called collections. So say I wanted to write about Nayar's death or Prabhupada's reaction to Nayar's death. So there'd be a whole collection, things I had said, things Prabhupada said, that we got from the database, and things other devotees had said. Shruti Kirti Prabhu, who was with Prabhupada when Prabhupada got the news. And so then when I was going to write about that, I would review all the material in the collections and put it together in the narrative. And it reminds me, I never thought of it that way before, but just now it struck me sort of like how Prabhupada would write his translations. He would look at all the commentaries of the previous acharyas and put it all together and write his purports.
Right. Thank you. What is the next book that Maharaj is planning to write?
Yes, that will be about traveling with Srila Prabhupada in India before Juhu. There are two time segments that I have to write about, or want to. One is Boston, leading up to when we went to India, and then traveling with Srila Prabhupada in India before Juhu. So I'm going to do that one first because there's more of Prabhupada in it. I consulted different God brothers, and some said, well, you should do it in chronological order, so you should start with Boston. But then Radhanath Swami, he's like so sweet and brilliant, he said, well, you've already done Juhu, so now you're doing it in chronological order going backwards. So, so I like that.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
Great. Wow, Maharaj, this was such a wonderful session. My question is, how do you build a relationship with your guru if you haven't met him in person yet?
Well, the main relationship comes from hearing. And there's one nice letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote in which he says that the eternal relation with the spiritual master begins from the first time he hears. Now, of course, Prabhupada was referring to meeting his guru, but he said the eternal relationship with the spiritual master begins from the first time he hears. And at my first meeting with my Guru Maharaj, he instructed me to to preach in the Western countries. And now it is coming to fact. But that the eternal relationship begins from the first time he hears. And, nowadays we can hear without meeting the person.
Yes.
We hear. So I think that Nidhi, I know dear Nidhi, I think that she can develop her relationship with her prospective guru by hearing his talks, following his instructions, offering service. She could write. Maybe she already has. Write him, ask what she can do for him. And the relationship can build.
Wonderful. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, was there anything mystical about the moment Srila Prabhupada left?
I would say so. I mean, the kirtan, that was amazing. And I do describe that in the book. The kirtan was amazing. Some devotees were chanting Jai Prabhupada, and some devotees were chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And as some witnesses have described it, it's like the ceiling disappeared and there was this current going from Prabhupada's room to the spiritual sky. I had my own personal desire that was fulfilled by Srila Prabhupada in his last hour or minutes. I wanted to do some personal service to his Vapu. And I was at the head of his bed, and it didn't seem like there was any chance. And then suddenly, a little before he left, he threw his arm back over the end of the bed. And I was able to hold his hand and squeeze it, give him a little massage. And out of his causeless mercy, he fulfilled that desire I had to render some service just before he left. And he was in perfect consciousness. And at the very moment that he left, he opened his mouth as if speaking, Hare Krishna.
Right.
And then he left.
Wow. Maharaj, great Leela Katha with Prabhupada. Anything you can say about your association with Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj? I listened to some of the audio conversations between you, him, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Seemed very sweet, intimate, and a lot of glorification of Prabhupada's deep teachings from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Would like to hear from you your recollections.
That question became complicated because Tamal Krishna Goswami and I went to Srila Narayan Maharaj with the idea that we would learn from him and then introduce what we learned from him into ISKCON, but in a way that was compatible and harmonious with what we got from Srila Prabhupada. So it was mainly meant to be like a private affair between us and Sripad Narayan Maharaj. And then one day, you could say the cat got out of the bag. What happened was Jadurani phoned the guest house at the Krishna Balaram temple and told the receptionist to give a message to Tamal Krishna Goswami and me that Narayan Maharaj would not be able to meet us that day. So that was, in a way, that was like a turning point. And then, there were problems. So our idea was, we would get knowledge from him and introduce it into ISKCON in a way that was congenial to Srila Prabhupada. But then devotees were thinking, well, it's good for them to go to Narayan Maharaj. Why not us? We'll also go to Narayan Maharaj. That was one aspect. And then the other aspect was that the level of conversation, the topic, Raganuga Bhakti, wasn't really that appropriate for the general devotees. But for a while that became, very common, and it wasn't really that good for the devotees, wasn't that good for the movement. And then independently, although there was some apprehension that the GBC would take up the topic in Mayapur, but both Tamal Krishna Goswami and I came to the conclusion on our own, before even going to Mayapur, that we should stop going because of these two reasons. It was encouraging others to go, and the topic of Raganuga Bhakti, the way he was presenting it. I mean, it wasn't quite, well, it wasn't Prabhupada's emphasis, and it wasn't Prabhupada's mood. And it was tricky because, if you accept someone as a Shiksha Guru, he should be compatible with your Diksha Guru by definition. And I would say on the very highest level, they're compatible because it's service to the divine couple. But in terms of practicing devotional service in ISKCON, Narayan Maharaj's mood and emphasis were different from Prabhupada's, and therefore it wasn't really appropriate for us as devotees to surrender to him as a Shiksha Guru, or to try to introduce him into ISKCON as a Shiksha Guru. So, but I certainly offer him all respect, and I have great appreciation for all that he taught us and did for us.
Really. Thank you. Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for this wonderful pastimes. What message you will give to today's devotees to maintain the spirits, the collaboration, the peace that was there at the time when Srila Prabhupada was here?
Well, I take collaboration as the key word, because before Srila Prabhupada left, he said, your love for me will be shown by how you cooperate after my departure. And that cooperation is so important. And it involves, keeping Prabhupada in the center, as he should be. And it involves us giving up our false egos and material attachments for the sake of Srila Prabhupada's service. There's a wonderful purport in Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.12, in which Srila Prabhupada explains, what our mood should be as devotees. And I mean, I could find it, but basically, I remember like the first couple of lines of the last paragraph. He writes, everyone should be friendly for the service of the Lord.
Wow.
Everyone should appreciate the service of others and not be proud of his own service. So I recommend every devotee read and reread that purport, because it tells us exactly how we should relate with one another.
Could you tell us again where you think that is again?
7.5.12.
Oh, okay, 7.5.12. Okay, I'm just going to note that down. Great, thank you.
I'll read
Sure.
Those first few sentences of the last paragraph.
Okay.
Everyone should be friendly for the service of the Lord. Everyone should praise another's service to the Lord and not be proud of his own service. This is the way of Vaishnava thinking, Vaikuntha thinking. There may be rivalries and apparent competition between servants in performing service. But in the Vaikuntha planets, the service of another servant is appreciated, not condemned. This is Vaikuntha competition. Everyone should be allowed to render service to the Lord to the best of his ability, and everyone should appreciate the service of others. Such are the activities of Vaikuntha. There's more, but that's the gist of it, and it's
Thank you.
right.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's really kind of like very simple, but at the same time so profound.
Mm.
How do you see ISKCON in 50 years?
Well, I see it in every town and village. But it's like during Srila Prabhupada's time, we had a meeting with Srimati Leelavati Munshi, who was the head of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. And she asked Prabhupada about the future of ISKCON. And Prabhupada replied that as long as my disciples follow my instructions, the future is bright. And he gave the example because she and her husband, they were involved with the freedom movement. And he gave the example of Nehru and Gandhi. That Gandhi wanted, village organization. And Nehru wanted industry, which was like the opposite of what Gandhi wanted. So he was making the point that, Nehru went against what Gandhi wanted. So Prabhupada was saying that as long as my disciples follow my instructions, the future will be bright. So how do I see it in 50 years? Well, in a way, it really depends on Srila Prabhupada's followers. But I would hope and pray that it will be wonderful. It will be flourishing in every town and village.
Yeah. I want to take one last question before we end. We're coming to the end of the time here. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, you were a university student too, and so am I. With your own experience, what advice will you give to students in Krishna consciousness, in a Krishna conscious way, who cannot handle pressure and stress? Thank you from Mauritius.
Yeah, I don't know how much my situation is similar to Akhilen's, but it's true. I was a university student, and it was maybe 2 months before graduation, I joined, and I asked the devotees whether I should go back and complete my education, get my degree or not. And the devotees advised me you should, because you never know, it might be helpful in the future. So I went back to campus, and I was so excited about Krishna consciousness. When I met my old friends and everything, I just wanted to tell them about Krishna consciousness. I didn't spend much time preparing for finals.
Right.
It was like a miracle. I literally felt that whatever answers I knew, those questions were on the test. The one exception, there was a question about evolution. And it was an essay question that I was thinking, wait a minute, I'm in trouble here. There's a problem here, you know? But then I got an A on the paper.
Wow.
And then I realized that the defect was not in my understanding of the theory of evolution, but in the theory itself. So it worked out. As far as pressure and stress, yeah, I mean, try to take shelter of Krishna, take shelter of the holy name, take shelter of the deities, and have faith in Krishna. Yeah, don't be too stressed out.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Well, that's all the time we have today. I wanted to thank so much, Maharaj, for you to take time out of your day to come and talk to me, and for all our listeners. We had about 160 viewers listening over all the different platforms. I was wondering if you could just leave us with one short concluding note or concluding statement before we end here.
When you said that, it reminded me of an interview that Srila Prabhupada had
Oh, really?
on the radio in New York City. And the interviewer asked him, do you have any final message for the people of New York? And Srila Prabhupada said, don't live like cats and dogs. But I think my parting message would be chant and be happy.
Chant and be happy. Great. Thank you so much. And if you want to get Maharaj's new book here, I'll Build You a Temple, you can find it on here, thejuhustory.com. Someone posted that link in the comments section. Also, Maharaj has his own personal website, which is girirajswami.com. It's tickering there down at the bottom. If you really like this podcast, please subscribe to it. Please, you can find it on YouTube and Facebook, as well as all different podcasting platforms. Next week we have. I'm trying to get to 100 episodes. I'm on 80 something, 82, and by the end of the year, try to get 100. Next week we have Saturday and Sunday. Saturday is a recorded conversation I had with Her Grace Govinda Dasi, who was Srila Prabhupada's one of the very early disciples. In 1966, she joined. So I had a very nice, interesting conversation with her. She's a very interesting person. And also on Sunday, we have His Holiness Tripurari Maharaj coming to talk about becoming a Gaudiya author. What does it mean to be a Gaudiya author? So he's going to talk a little bit about that, which is very interesting also. So thank you again, Maharaj, for joining me. I really appreciate it. And everyone else, please have a great rest of your evening. Maharaj, please stay on. I'm just going to turn off the live. Hare Krishna, everyone. Have a great day.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.